Well, in the last video, I was here at the Air and Space Museum in Fairfax County, Virginia, and looked at some World War II aircraft. In this particular video, going to be looking at some of the aircraft that was used during the Cold War era, so specifically Korea, Vietnam, and maybe a few others. Lots of interesting stuff here, though. When it comes to Cold War military aircraft, the SR-71 Blackbird might be one of the most iconic. Also, one of the fastest planes that the U.S. has ever produced. Went from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles, Los Angeles to Washington, D.C. in 1 hour and 4 minutes and 20 seconds. That's crazy. Now this looks like something that Indiana Jones would have flown in, and as you can see, looks a little bit porous, so I don't know that I would fly in it. But this is actually a plane that was on Ford's Island during the Pearl Harbor attack. Cool. Alright, so here's an F-86 Sabre. This was the first swept-wing jet fighter that the Americans produced, and the Air Force used this in Korea primarily. So something like this would have flown missions over the Yalu River in Korea. Also had a real impressive shoot-down advantage against enemy MiGs. And speaking of the MiGs, here's a MiG-15. It was designed by the Soviets. This was a Soviet jet fighter, and they were pretty impressive. Ran with a Rolls-Royce jet engine. Pretty cool airplane. This is an F-105 Thunder Chief. This is a fighter bomber that could have carried a nuclear payload, but was used during Operation Rolling Thunder during Vietnam. Really, there is no piece of aircraft that is more iconic to the Vietnam War than the Huey helicopter. This was used during Korea also, but it was the lifeline for soldiers and Marines during Vietnam. And then over here have the very first gunship. This is a Cobra. Went into production, I think, in 1967. If I'm not mistaken. Was eventually replaced by the Apache. Very cool. Now, this is something that started service in Vietnam and is still in use today. This is a CH-46. Interesting. There's an F-100 Super Sabre. This is something that saw heavy use during the Vietnam War. This particular aircraft saw action during the Cuban Missile Crisis, but the Air Force used these greatly during Vietnam. Now this is pretty fascinating. This is a set of prisoner of war pajamas from a guy who was captured during the Vietnam War. Man, oh man. Hard to imagine what those guys went through. Very interesting piece though. Well, that was cool. Definitely worth a drive out. There is no other place where you're going to see that many historic aircraft assembled in one place And especially, there's not any other place where you can go where you're going to see the Enola Gay. Yeah, Air and Space Museum. Learned a lot. I don't claim to know very much about aviation, but I don't think that one's gonna fly.